So this is our 35th story time, which means that next time I see you, we will be wrapping up the 3rd year of story time. Oddly enough, since most of you, hopefully, have just received one of these 2nd year books. Yay! But yes, so we're coming up to the end of our 3rd year, so I'll have a think about what that will do our topics next time at the end of this one. And then in March, we will have our 3rd birthday for Storytime. So that's exciting. So our topics today included secret passageways and spaces in gardens, adults getting into kids' games, the idea of journeys within 4 walls, so sort of adventures at home, Sunday activities, including those hot weekend afternoons at home, invasive plants, surprise animals, unlikely people swearing or using unexpected language, unusual uses for cutlery. This is one off the waiting list that I've thrown in. I decided it would work. And when you have a personal name or phrase for something that somehow does make sense to others. So in the past, we've had kind of the topic of in-group language where other people won't get it when they hear you using your terms for something. But this time it's those immediately understandable ones. And Mum had the example of the tree that she referred to as the elbow tree, and her friend called it the tree with outstretched arms. So that, but they both knew what tree they were talking about on their regular walk. And then someone had used the phrase too big to see at some point, which I decided I needed to fit in. But I've only put it in briefly, but is also in the poem that I'm going to read. I've also got a quick little vignette bit, just a bit of scene setting. If Emily were here, she might recognize this scene. We were tunneling to some wild place as we burrowed a labyrinth under the shrubbery. It was hot, and the dry earth gripped our clammy fingers and toes in a grimy embrace. I pricked my hand on some thorny shed branch, and we had to turn back for the salve of aloe vera. It didn't matter, though. We were bound for some dream place, certain that sometime soon the light beyond the leaves would be our fairyland. Oh, this poem is called Too Big to See. Under the dappled shade of twisting tendrils, where the sun cannot seep as strongly, and the earth is still unbaked enough to burrow through, where a surprise might be lying behind the next lush leaf of uncontrollable peppery growth, a creeping creature or a hidden hallway, a journey in a half hour, in between bright buds of infinite road, too big to see without a guide, curiously, kind or impish in imagination, unexpected untangling of time, an abrupt eruption back into the harsh sun, an afternoon almost gone. I have some blobby nasturtium illustrations on this page. That would have been appropriate. Yeah. What is the plant that you've got? Is it a jasmine-like thing?
Oh yeah, we've got 2 kinds of jasmine, one from the archway over the front and one from the collar at the back, and some, what the heck is that called? Gerontium or something? Purple flower. From the back fence.
Mm. Well, the jasmine might be quite appropriate to our story. That in the story there is a creeper that has gone rather bananas. So the story is called Grandma in Fairyland. Beyond the dusty windowsill, where a sad fly had given up on life and lay baking with its legs in the air, the glass was warm to the touch. Beyond was a lush, slightly sagging wall of green. Betty gazed out at it as the cricket droned like the dusk wings of insects on the radio. The TV, muted, was playing yet another ad break. This advert featuring small creatures surfing on cereal waves. Betty and Matt's friend, Janine, was matching the cricket commentator's drone with another update on what her daughter, who Betty and Matt had never met, had texted her. She says there's a guinea pig out the front of her house, she reported, scrolling with her index finger using large dramatic swipes. Oh, replied Matt politely. A seagull has taken up residence on the railing of the north stand and is surveying the play with some interest, announced the cricket commentator. Animals all over, mused Betty absent-mindedly. In her mind, a scene at the garden shop some months ago was replaying in subdued sepia tones. Don't buy a pink trumpet vine, Mum, her daughter Katie had said. It'll go everywhere. You'll have nothing else in the garden. Betty had puffed herself up. She was good at puffing herself up. Twin sets, she'd discovered, were almost as good as feathers for this purpose. Well, that will be just right. I'll have this on the fences and nasturtiums on the ground, and I'll never have to do anything to make it green and pretty, she'd insisted. Katie and Matt had both been defeated by her determination to fill the large garden as simply as possible, and ever since, neither of them had been brave enough to repropose the simpler plan of moving to a smaller house with a more manageable sized garden to fill. The pink trumpet vine now climbed up the trees and down the sides of the garden shed, over the carport, and if they weren't careful, through the windows. The nasturtiums had sent up curling tendrils to meet it and absorbed all other shrubs, flower beds, garden sculptures, lawn, and small trees into their green lily-pad ocean. Then summer came, and they turned to tangled straw while the pink trumpet vine reigned supreme, only giving up space to the occasional patch of periwinkle. Paths had vanished, and spoons and forks taken out to be used as markers to label herb beds and trowels to dig small holes for annuals were lost forever. Katie had been right about what the pink trumpet vine would do, but Betty preferred to think of her as misguided. After all, the plants were serving the desired purpose. They were just doing it a little bit too well. Betty was shaken from her musings by a sudden explosion of giggles from the fold-out table where her granddaughter, Annae, and Janine's granddaughter, Nina, were busy painting. Nina had painted a fish, and Annae had reached in and put a large cat face behind it, as though the cat's eyes were watching the fish through the glass of a fish tank. As Betty looked on, Nina added a bubble shape around the cat's head so that it appeared instead to be scuba diving. She splashed blue paint blobs onto Annae's picture of a butterfly in doing so, at which Annae briefly frowned, but then she grabbed the blue-dipped brush out of Nina's hand and began making the blobs into floating bubbles and parts of other insects. The paint was drying instantly in the breeze from the struggling air conditioner, even the bits that were still in the palette. Lou's taken the guinea pig inside, Janine reported, turning her phone to show Matt a squat creature sitting on some tiled flooring. Is your daughter allowed to have animals in her unit? Asked Betty. No, Janine replied, but this one is an accident. Probably best to bring it inside anyway in this heat, said Matt. He squinted at the image. It's a bit sort of stout, isn't it? That's what guinea pigs are like, Matt, Betty scoffed. Do you think it's all right? Janine asked, squinting closer. What could it be doing in Lou's garden? I hope it wasn't chased by a dog or dropped by somebody. Tell her to take it to the vet, Betty advised. They can find out who it belongs to. Do guinea pigs get those chip Watsits? Perhaps, assuming it's been desexed and microchipped, Matt declared, it looks to me as though it might be making more guinea pigs. Betty chuckled. Jones comes to a skidding halt at the boundary and makes an easy catch, and he's very pleased about it too, throwing the crowd a very goofy grin, reported the radio. The adults all turned to the TV again to see. Look, Grandma, Annae swung round in her chair. Our paintings are finished. She held up her scene of one giant butterfly, surrounded by bubbles, other insects, and one very small guinea pig with colourful wings. Lovely, smiled Betty. Shall we get a picture? She got up and began digging through the top drawer of the cabinet that the television sat on. Why don't you use your new phone, Betty? Asked Janine. Oh, not that blasted thing, Betty snapped. Matt and I spend half our time trying to work out where it is and the other half trying to work out what it's doing. It was doing something very odd last night, wasn't it, Matt? There was some kind of little creature bouncing back and forth across the screen. Anyhow, I'm not sure how to get the photos out of it. I've got the hang of that with the camera now. She tugged at the lower left door of the cabinet, and the handle came off. Oh, drat. Matt, where's the door spoon? Matt stood up and reached for the top shelf of the bookcase, from which he produced a rather bent-looking tablespoon, and knelt down with an oof noise to lever at the cabinet door. It popped open with a soft thug sound, and assorted boxes and cables fell out. Betty sifted through them and pulled out a small silver-padded case from amongst the deluge. All right, girls, nice big smiles, she prompted, taking out the camera. Annae and Nina held their paintings up below their chins. Oh no, I don't think that one's come out right. Try again. Nice big smiles. No, don't hold it so close to your mouth, Annae. It looks like it's coming out of your mouth. We don't want a vomit butterfly. That's better. Lovely. She turned the camera around so Annae and Nina could see the picture. The air conditioner ruffled up the pages already littering the fold-out table. And on the television, a batsman walked off the field with a sad, bat-dragging cartoon duck mirroring him along the bottom of the screen. What do you want to do next, girls? Betty asked Annae and Nina. Bake biscuits, Annae declared. Betty raised an eyebrow. I think it might be a bit hot for the oven to go on this afternoon, she told them. Can we try to do that puzzle? Nina pointed into the cupboard that Matt had coaxed open at a jigsaw box showing a painting of a colourful tropical fish. Betty retrieved it. Are you sure, Nina? It's a very tricky one, I think. Nina nodded enthusiastically. I like arduous ones. It quickly turned out, however, that Nina just liked using the word arduous, and the 1,000-piece puzzle was coming together much too slowly to hold the children's interest. Can we go outside, Grandma? Annae pleaded, with the typical look of a child who's been in the same few meters of air-conditioned space all afternoon. Betty glanced out at her jungle beyond the window. Only if you put on hats and sunblock and take a drink of water out with you and watch out for snakes, she replied sternly. Daddy says snakes are more scared of us than we are of them, Annae announced. Said Betty. And what does Mummy say? That we shouldn't go near them, just in case it's a brave superhero one. Very sensible. Betty accompanied the girls out into the hallway and gave them each a straw hat, before proceeding to the kitchen for a plastic jug of water with a lid to keep bugs and dust out, and some plastic cups. Matt, Janine's voice said from the other room, I think this guinea pig is getting bigger. Matt's murmur of surprise was drowned out by the snap of the screen door, as Annae and Nina exited the house with a wave of delighted chatter, leaving the wafting scent of sunblock behind them. Betty put the kettle on for herself and then got everyone else some cool water with lemon and ice cubes. Beyond the screen door, The creeper-covered garden stretched out into the close, warm air, a constant hum and tick of insects and birds and rustling nasturtium mulch filling the space like the chorus of tiny voices. Annae held the lidded jug of water her grandma had filled in one hand and the 2 cups in the other. As the door closed behind them, she turned to Nina and whispered, "Are you ready to go to Fairyland?" Nina put her hands on her hips. "There's a way to Fairyland here?" Annae nodded seriously. "It's too big to see for most people. You have to find the way in. But I'll show you. Follow me." She wove around a mound where the creeper had grown over some kind of other large stump, set down the water jug, and lifted a curtain of creeper hanging from a tree. And then she disappeared on her hands and knees below it. Then her hand reappeared and drew the water jug and cups inside. "Come on, Nina." Nina paused. Annae was completely obscured behind the leafy sheet, and suddenly the entrance seemed momentous, as though they might never return like people who feasted with the fairies in stories. Hesitantly, she reached out a hand and pulled at the hanging vines, and Annae promptly grabbed hold of Nina's fingers and pulled her in. Beyond the curtain, the light was transformed into patchwork dapples of green and gold, and Annae and Nina's skin seemed to sparkle with blinking lights. Either side of them, roots and shoots stretched their way toward the sky. Under this shelter, some of the nasturtiums survived, their stems tall and their leaves like umbrellas. Birds twittered somewhere in the wooded tangles either side, and Nina spotted an intricate spider's web that caused her both fascination and trepidation. The magic of the space was somewhat broken, however, when Annae began to make a very unusual noise. "Esh! Esh!" she went, thumping her hands on the ground as she crawled forwards. "What are you doing, Annae?" Nina demanded, trying to keep up and move the water jug ahead of her without spilling it. "I'm making a boss snake noise to scare any other snakes away," Annae replied, in a tone that told Nina she was very silly not to realize this. "You can do the spider one." Nina frowned. "How do spiders go?" Annae laughed. "No, you don't do a spider noise. You do a noise of an animal that eats spiders, like a magpie or a lizard." "Woo, woo, 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 woo," went Nina, doing her best at being a magpie without having yet learnt to whistle. They approached a bend in the creeper tunnel, where a low shrub struggled to survive the limited sunlight, and snails had sealed themselves up against the heat between the roots. "This is the squatting bush," Annae announced. "Do you see?" Nina looked at the roots and saw how they bunched up in 2 knee-like structures against the lower branches. She nodded. Crawling around the squatting bush, Nina saw a thick trunk of something up ahead that rose out of the ground at an angle, as though trying unsuccessfully to get out of the creeper's reach. "Now we have to go up the ramp tree," Annae instructed, crawling onto the trunk and grasping onto its knots and nodules easily. "What about the water jug?" Nina inquired. Annae twisted around to see where it was. "Pass it to me when I'm almost up," she said. "Up here is the big fuck-off stump, which is a good spot to put all our stuff." Nina didn't think this name made as much sense as squatting bush and ramp tree. "Why do you call it that?" she asked. "Oh, it's just because it's very big and sturdy," Annae replied. "When something is very big and strong, or very big and very annoying, you can call it fuck off. I heard my cousin saying it about really big bird poos on her car." They had by this point reached the stump, and Nina had to agree, based on Annae's definition, that it was indeed a big fuck off one. The stump had more rings than she could count, which she knew meant that it was a very old tree, and it was wide enough to place the water jug and cups down on and have room to sit alongside them. The view from the top of the stump revealed an entire section of garden, screened off by hanging sheets of creeper. There was an old bird bath poking up from the ground below, and a few other plants surviving, hidden within the creeper walls. Watch this! Annae lowered herself from the edge of the stump and lay back in a creeper hammock, which supported her weight as though it was a net strung between the stump and the nearby edge of a structure that may have once been a rainwater tank. Nina hesitantly climbed down too, and they lay on their backs in the creeper net, looking up at the green leafy ceiling that hid them from the sky, where several butterflies danced from tendril to tendril. We should plan a fairy feast here, suggested Nina. Yeah. Annae sat up enthusiastically and rocked the creeper alarmingly. We could go get snacks and some music and a picnic blanket for the big fuck off stump and some flowers to decorate with, and we should dress up. Meanwhile, inside the air-conditioned lounge room back in the house, Janine was becoming increasingly concerned about the guinea pig that her daughter had found. Now she says her friends are laughing at me, worrying about it, she spluttered. How mean is that? What if it's ill? That does seem like a rascally response, pondered Betty, peering over at Janine's phone, where the guinea pig sat, looking unreasonably large, on Janine's daughter's couch. That's a very big guinea pig. I told you it was unusually stout, complained Matt. I'm telling you, it's bloated or something, Janine insisted. It keeps getting bigger. She scrolled back through the images and Betty put on her glasses to see the screen better. Indeed, the guinea pig seemed to be larger in every photo than it was in the last. Oh, heavens, Betty murmured. Its expression seems a bit frightened too. Do guinea pigs always have big wide eyes like that? She took a sip of her tea. I'd better go and see how the girls are getting on outside, she said, unsettled. She got up and headed for the back door. When Betty emerged into the heat of the yard, she realised that she could not see more than a few metres ahead for the lush and tangled green of her pink trumpet vine. She could hear Annae and Nina's excited voices coming from somewhere within the mass of leaves. How are you doing, girls? She called into the greenery. Still got plenty of water? There was a rustle, and then Annae's voice called out, We're doing good, Grandma. We're in Fairyland. And we're going to have a fairy feast. There was a pause. Can we have a tablecloth and biscuits? Betty chuckled. Sure. You might need to give a delivery address, though. I don't know my way in Fairyland. Some more rustling followed, and Annae's head appeared from under a long, free-hanging section of creeper. You'd like it in here, Grandma. You can come to the party too. I don't know about that, Betty told her. My knees are not so good at crawling nowadays. Nevertheless, once the three of them had paid a visit to the kitchen for some lime cordial to add to the water, biscuits, plates, more cups, a blanket, a small battery CD player, some pegs, a string of bunting, and a vase, Betty felt curiosity getting the better of her. She followed Annae to the creeper curtain, and Nina lifted it up so that Betty could crawl underneath. You have to make the snake and spider noises to scare all the snakes and spiders away, Nina told Betty firmly. The spider one is like, woo, woo, woo. Whoa, Betty attempted. And they giggled. Not bad, Grandma. She crawled forwards and they spent the next 20 minutes ferrying the feast equipment up to the ramp tree, making snake and spider noises the whole time. We're going to set up the feast on the big fuck-off stump, Annae announced. Yeah, said Nina, it's a good spot. Excuse me, the what stump? Asked Betty incredulously. The big fuck off one, Annae clarified. It means it's very big and you can't miss it. Cousin Nat told me. Ah, said Betty, winking. I see, but you didn't learn that word from me, did you? Some people will find it very rude. It might be best to give the stump a different name if you mention it in show and tell. Annae took the biscuit plate and disappeared as she placed it down. Okay. She reappeared and then reached down for the vase. That's everything. Are you ready for the feast, Grandma? All right, said Betty, eyeing the slope of the ramp tree. It might take a while to get me up there. But she inched up onto the tree trunk, and Nina pushed her from behind while Annae pulled from above. And shortly, Betty emerged into the magical creeper-lined chamber, looking about in delight. I knew the pink trumpet vine would be nice, she exclaimed. A short time later, Betty was enjoying a turn in the creeper hammock and wondering how she was going to get out again, when the creeper on the rainwater tank side rustled, and out stepped a fluffy white cat. Oh, hello, cat, Nina squealed. What's its name? Annae spread her hands and Betty gave a surprised laugh. I don't know, she chuckled. That's not our cat. Annae patted the tree stump next to her and the cat made its way over around the roof of the old rainwater tank to meet her, winding around where she sat and sniffing at the crumbs of the biscuits on the plate. Annae stroked the cat and squinted up in the direction it had come from. Grandma, she said curiously, why are there spoons hanging on that branch? Betty tried to look, found that the creeper hammock was in the way, and then smiled. Ah, I guess that must be the old apricot tree, she told them. Your grandpa used to hang shiny spoons up in it to keep the birds away. Annae was about to question how effective this would be, when the sound of voices and the click of the screen door alerted them all to the presence of other people in the yard. Annae, came Matt's voice. Your mum's here. Oh, Annae groaned. Okay, Betty called back. We'll be out in a minute. We're just in Fairyland. The white cat jumped down from the stump, landing somewhere under the creeper below, and disappeared. Annae and Nina took one of Betty's arms each and helped to haul her up from the creeper hammock. She slid down the ramp tree on her bottom, and Nina followed, making her anti-spider noises. Annae peered down at them from the top. Grandma, Nina, I can't get down now. I've got all these fucking things. She waved her elbows, her arms full of the vase and cups. Annae, came the surprised voice of her mother from behind the creeper wall. Where on earth did you learn that word? Ow, exclaimed Nina as Annae attempted to toss down one of the cups and hit her on the nose. Pass me the blanket, Annae offered Betty, wiggling back to the ramp tree. I can't, Grandma, Annae exclaimed. I've got all these other fucking things. Annae, snapped Katie from outside. Give me the vase then, said Betty calmly, reaching up. Multiple trips and much crawling and many snake and spider noises later, Betty, Annae and Nina emerged from the creeper curtain. That little rascal, Janine was exclaiming. She tricked me. The guinea pig was one of those pictures you can stick on top of your photos on the Instagram. Oh, said Matt. That's why it kept changing sides without changing its expression. Nina giggled. Matt, puffed Betty, it's amazing in there. All that fucking creeper has created a secret fairyland. It took her a moment to realise that Katie had fixed her with a grim stare. What? I think I know where Annae learnt that word, said Katie in a quiet, cross voice. Betty looked suitably guilty. Seriously, though, You should all see it in there, she told them. Definitely worth crawling for. Matt, Katie, and Janine looked at one another. I don't think I'd like it in there, Matt said. There might be spiders. Oh, don't worry about that, Betty laughed. We scare them off with special spider predator sounds, don't we? Annae, Nina, and Betty glanced at one another. Woo-woo-woo, they chorused. I'll stay here, Matt said firmly, as Katie, Janine, Betty, Nina, and Annae all disappeared on their hands and knees through the creeper curtain. Ash! Ash! Woo, 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 came the noises from inside the creeper forest. I'll just go and make our tea then, Matt sighed, turning back towards the house. The creeper rustled, and a fluffy white cat emerged and followed Matt to the door, where it sat waiting to go inside. But you're not our cat, Matt told it, perplexed. Meow, answered the cat. Betty, there's a strange cat here, Matt called into the creeper. I don't believe you, Janine's voice called back. I'm not falling for that one again. Matt looked at the cat. I guess you'd better come in then, he said. And from that moment on, Fairy the cat became an accepted presence in Betty and Matt's household. And it was generally accepted that Fairyland lay beyond the pink trumpet vine wall, and there was no such thing as a plant that grew too much, although there was certainly such a thing as too many fucking things.
Yay! Fun.
For any UK people who may later listen to this story, that magpie sound will be very confusing. So I will put a link in the description of this video to an Australian magpie singing. You understand what the children and Betty were fairly ineffectually trying to imitate. Magpies over here in the Northern Hemisphere make a kind of like sound, like they're sort of going, huh! I don't think much of you. It's not a pretty sound at all, but Australian magpies make a very beautiful song.
That was a great story. And it alludes to childhood reality, and
Yeah.
I have to get a spoon that has been used for a different purpose.
All right, yes, let's see it.
Okay, this is the, I can see it. This is the Grattan spoon, which was found in the backyard, and it's definitely been used as a gardening tool.
Oh yeah.
And there were, but this, interestingly,
looks like it's been used to dig in molten lava.
Well, yeah, I think
very hard soil, maybe clay.
The copper sort of look about it indicates that it was probably a silver spoon, which is shows something grandma's priorities.
The gardening, not the silver cutlery. Quite right too.
You should know like how you get the grandma and all the mums and things going through that fairy thing, Sarah. That's a bit reminiscent of what you actually.
Yeah, that's sort of what inspired the topic of adults getting into children's games. I think is that I think both my grandmas were made to go through this kind of tunnel of trees, but on top of the trees. So they were these pines, and they kind of all interlocked in a long sort of hedge. So you could get up at one end and you'd be completely inside the trees, and there were these kind of smooth branch pathways that you could follow through. And I made most of my relatives go along this fairy pathway.
And they were beautiful. You get to the end of them because they were pines.
And then you just sort of slide down and the branch would bend to the ground, yeah. Yeah, it was pretty, you couldn't really hurt yourself. I did fall through a gap a couple of times, but you wouldn't fall and hit the ground hard because underneath was lots and lots of like twiggy sort of messy bits of the tree. So you'd get scratched a lot, but you'd just sort of gently crack your way down through the twigs, and you wouldn't go smack on the ground. So, you know, it was relatively safe place to be up high.
I didn't get the bit, Sarah, about the hamster getting bigger because I'm not a aficionado of Instagram. That was the only bit in the story that I really couldn't link into properly because I didn't understand.
Yeah, well, it's the point. You weren't necessarily meant to get it until the end. But so that what it is just like in a photo editor, if you have like an overlay you can put on, like, you know, those what do they call it, like that you put on your Facebook profile, like a sticker sort of bottom or whatever, and you can like zoom in or out, so it will take up more or less of the picture. So it's just like an overlay that you put onto the photo. So depending how zoomed in or out the photo was, the guinea pig would look bigger or smaller. That was what this friend's daughter had done with a dog to her.
Nice.
She'd been completely convinced by it, but if you actually see it, you can kind of tell that it's the same picture of a dog. It's just like when people Photoshop things in, because obviously the creature doesn't change at all, other than appearing to get smaller or bigger, because it's just like a sticker that they've put on top. Yeah. That's what it was.
Sarah, I thought I quite like that aspect that Barry's talking about, because what that means is some of your listeners or readers,
some of you had the same experience as the character. Yeah.
Barry, and some would be like, oh, I bet that's one of those things.
Yeah.
They've got it right. I thought the stuff about the descriptions that people would understand, like the ramp tree.
Yeah.
That was really well done, because I think we would have said things like that. The horse tree, because there used to be a tree at that had a dip.
Oh yeah, like a saddle.
Yeah, it was almost like a saddle, so that was the horse tree, you know.
Yeah.
Like so I can understand.
At one point, I remember as a child, kind of making little like road signs for the garden. And naming all the sort of paths and things, special names, like, you know, nasturtium walk and you know, this way to the trampoline and stuff, like, you know, putting up all these little directional things. But I gave everything appropriate names. But because as a child I wasn't particularly good at giving things names that weren't very, very literal, was I? Like, my bike that was purple was called Purple. And yeah. But by the same token, a doll that had a head that was kind of the same shape as our doorknob was called Doorknob.
I had a dinosaur that I called Monkey.
Monkey the dinosaur. Yeah. That's Dave.
I think I had a bunk bed. I remember being like my first bunk bed. I was quite young, and that was all sorts of things, because it was a bed up top and then the underneath was just blank space.
Yeah.
And also blanket forts were all sorts of things.
Yes.
Inside, and then I had some friends who had half-acre blocks or acre blocks, and they were very rambly. So we'd have, you know, the forest of whatever and that in different places.
We had a lot of monster realms, and when I was younger, there was just like invisible monsters, and a tree would be the portal to their house, or, you know, things like that. And then when we got older, then there was we used to act out Harry Potter, so a particular stone would be like where you make your potions, and there's other spots, the dorm room, and
like the portal thing. I definitely had like certain things, like you climbed a certain tree and you got down the other side, and that meant you'd gone into a different like world, even though it looked exactly the same.
Yeah, like doing portals, you know, you had to go on the swing and do this 3 times in some
Yes.
Oh.
Yep, that's one.
A ritual that allows it.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
Well, any requests for? Oh no, we just have to look at a kitten for a minute.
Yeah.
That's very.
Oh.
She was sleeping and doing like where they run in their sleep.
Oh.
I love it.
She's been very snuggly since her brothers moved to their new parents.
Mm.
And just been following me around and yelling at me if I go like somewhere else, like to the toilet. She's like, "What are you doing without me?"
You're her new sibling. Ooh.
Essentially.
She's adopted you.
Yeah.
Oh.
Sarah, that might be a thing in the topic, like young animals versus older animals and the advantage.
Mm.
They have their thing.
Yes.
So just that's a possibility.
No, she's very cute, but she has been yelling at Dawn. Because I had them all in a separate room. But yeah, now she doesn't want to be alone in that room overnight. So I might have to bring her into my bedroom overnight just so she doesn't yell all day, all night.
It's got you worked out.
Okay, so then we can add to that the tyranny of animals at various ages. Like, just the word tyranny and slave, those kind of words.
I have another suggestion on a completely different topic, but when something in your house you're convinced is broken and suddenly it just works and you think someone else has fixed it and they thought you had fixed it, and then you realise neither of you have fixed it, but it suddenly works for no reason.
Okay.
And I don't know what you want to do with that one, but yeah.
So is there an original story behind that particular suggestion, Kate?
It was one of we've got quite tall ceilings, and one of the bathroom lights just wasn't working from when we moved in, and that was fine and it was on our to-do list. And then it suddenly, both of us noticed that it was working and thought the other person had done that. And then we actually went to the point, because we had someone to visit and they're quite a handy person, so we kind of went, did you by any chance No, but it was working. So it's just randomly started working after about 6 months. So yeah, really weird. Yeah.
Someone's rearranging the steering of the electric.
Yeah.
Cute. That was a good one. Although I feel like I'd have to have the explanation for why the thing started working again as like, a third person narrator. I'd have to hint at why this was. It probably shouldn't just randomly happen, but maybe it can. Bit of mystery.
Yes.
If you find out the answer to that, why it started working again, sometimes our camper trailer water pump works and sometimes it doesn't. And we went to KI, we arrived at Vivon Bay and the pump didn't work. And then we went somewhere else. Went to near Western River and it worked for a little while. And I thought, because I just switched the switch and it was firing water out the back of it. I better hook up the tap. Hooked up the tap and didn't work. And it didn't work at Lashmere. And then we got home and it didn't work because I tested it. And then I did one final test. Cleaned the camper. And then did one final test and it worked. And it's worked.
It's contagious.
My dad used to call that an intermittent fault. That's a nice.
An intermittent fault. Well, that's essentially what it is, isn't it, with that thing?
It's an intermittent fault there, and he had a little thing, blah, 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 starting with a B of things.
So
it's quite hard to trace,
Yeah, you can't work out what's causing it then.
Oh, you're going to put backup systems in there, Sarah?
No, well, what I was writing down is that, like, the thing of when you the thing's not working. So you like go and call the support line or whatever, and they're like, it's broken. And they're like, okay, show me. And then it works. So you can't prove that it's not working.
Well, that's what I was about to take it back to Dave Benson yesterday or on Friday. But and like I tested it Thursday, and I said, mate, you won't believe it works, and it works every time. I thought, well, pointless taking it back now because it's going to work.
They won't believe you.
Holiday, and so I did it again. You know, like
taken something back and insisted. Do you want to tell them about the shower thing?
Oh, the shower. Yeah, that didn't work at all.
Your camp shower didn't work.
Camp shower.
We had the builder try and make it work, and he had a similar model. We were going to get Mark to come around and bring his and compare them because it was the same model and wouldn't go.
yeah.
And then we just put the batteries in a different way.
You have them around the wrong way or something.
It's not very clear on the thing which way they go in. That's
So it doesn't really have a good.
Very ambiguous. I had a new gas bottle. I filled the gas bottle up. We did all the tests, tried all the connections. You know, couldn't get it to go. Stayed on 5 degrees or whatever the water temperature was.
Yeah.
Wouldn't warm up.
But I did say it might be something to do with the batteries, and both Barry and the builder went, no, it's not the batteries. But
because the light was coming on, so they were like, well, the battery's working because it's getting power. Yeah. I get why you think that. Obviously, it wasn't all or nothing. It was like it had some power, but not enough power because the batteries weren't the right way.
Should have worked at all.
But the funny thing,
it was weird that it worked.
We had this for 9 weeks. We had this shower that we thought didn't work, and we borrowed our builder's campus shower, which was terrific. And so on, and we only tested this when we were getting ready for summer, and we thought, actually, we'll get home from the beach, we might shower outside, water goes on the lawn, and we don't throw sand into the house, and Barry worked out this thing with the batteries. But meanwhile, for 9 weeks, I've been sending this company emails and going, you know, this doesn't function. They're sending me things back saying, take a video of yourself showing us what you're doing, and we, you know, and upload it to this like impossible thing, which we couldn't possibly.
It wouldn't do it.
And so I just went, we don't have to do this. If the thing doesn't work, it doesn't work. And it checked by somebody with a similar system.
Yeah.
But I was absolutely insistent because we were dead sure.
Yeah, you were certain that wasn't working. Yeah. It definitely doesn't work.
I had it at a rental, a plumber assume I was lying about a fault or really, really thick. And I got to the point where the landlord was brilliant and furious about what happened and had a word with them afterwards. So I just sent them a video of the like no water coming out of any of the taps, because you know at that point I'm like, well, you're not believing me and you're saying I'm blah 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 blah. So I just like, that was my reply. I was like, look, I don't really care. It's just not working. Could you just fix it? It's but you just sometimes the lengths that you have to go to are ridiculous.
I had a mobile phone in, I think it was Mount Gambier, or it might have been Whyalla, I'm not sure which one. It stopped working on the Friday, and it was Vodafone in those days, and they didn't have a helpline. It was 24/7. You had to ring up during office hours if you had a problem. So I spent the whole weekend going to phone boxes, putting 20-cent pieces in to talk to Anne. And then I went back to school on Monday and I ring up the helpline because it's now office hours. And you know what they asked me to do, don't you?
Start the phone
on again. And the bloody thing works.
Oh no. You really not tried turning it off and on again yourself?
Seriously, that was the last thing. I thought, this bloody thing won't connect with the networks. Try all the settings.
Same thing, Barry. We were at Pandana in the middle of KI. Pulled up at Pandana, got out the car, and we decided to move the car a bit closer to the shop that our friends had decided to go to. And I got in the car and turned the key, went click, nothing. It clicked again, nothing. So then I thought, let's just go and have this coffee at this coffee shop. then I came back and
They got in the car.
yeah, they got in the car, turned the key over, nothing.
Then no, there was a yellow light, immobiliser.
Yeah, well, it's a yellow light came on with a lock through, sort of like a lock through the car or something or other, as I had been immobilised or something or other. But I thought, okay, I put a booster battery pack on to boost the thing, turned it over, and I got my mate Paul to turn it over, nothing, just not the starter motor wouldn't start. So I switched it off. I said, look, you might as well get going because I've got to get the RAA here. And so we said our goodbyes. And I called the RAA and they, so I was talking to them and said, can you describe the light that's on? Yep, sure. I'll get back in the car, turned it on, the light, yeah, that orange yellow light with a lock through it came on. And I just clicked it a bit further. She started. But I went past the accessories. I've done that so many times. You know, my mate did it so many times, and it started perfectly ever since. But not my mate, not me. No, I just couldn't get
stuck.
Well, that's what happened to us the first time when I had the new Kia.
Yep.
I have to put the clutch in to start.
Yeah, that's right.
No, you didn't know that, so you just thought the thing wouldn't start.
Wouldn't start. No, bloody thing. I only had it for 24 hours. I wouldn't go.
Yeah.
My old HD Holden, that used to hold it in third. It would jump out of third gear. So there was an octopus straight down below the driver's seat. You pulled it round and hooked it underneath when you got to the third, so it wouldn't pop out.
Keep it in gear.
It was like a Ford shift. You know those ones?
Yeah. We have unpredictable manual cars or just unpredictable clutches and all that as a topic, because I feel like there's probably something to say.
Non-standard, non-standard.
Yeah.
Because so Mark's had the lady with the lift-up reverse. The old V-dub that I learned to drive in, you had to push down on the reverse to the side of the back.
Right.
That could take some doing if you weren't reasonably strong in your
Yeah.
you could take some doing, and you would think you had it, and then you'd go to reverse and you'd move forward.
Move forward, yeah.
Trying to do a ramp part, one of the.
Yeah, well, now you've completely gone out of line, and you've got to line yourself up again. Be there for hours.
We had another one where that time when we moved stuff from Grattan Street, had to fill this van up afterwards with petrol.
God.
We couldn't find where the petrol went. I had to ring up the hire company and say,
where's the petrol?
It was behind the driver's seat.
What, like the bit that you have to use to open the door on the petrol was behind you?
Yeah.
Inside the cabin.
So did you have to get out of the car and go around to the passenger door behind and then pull the lever?
Yeah, really.
You couldn't reach it from your seat.
No, it's a great big van. You couldn't do it. You had to get out of the van and open the door.
It's not very user friendly, is it? Not very ergonomic.
But I walked around the car 15 times looking for, the thing that all cars have got. We push the little thing and there's the petrol where it goes in.
That's right, because I wasn't.
Did you not see it on the outside of the car, like where it was, or?
On the inside of the car. It's inside
the actual petrol thing was inside the car.
Yeah, the petrol in there. And that's so.
Oh, we'll make it smelly though. Yuck.
It doesn't, but I would imagine it's because it's a big van. It would be a great one to siphon off petrol from if you could.
Oh, so if you can lock the door and then they can't get to the petrol.
Very, very tall and very, very flat and long. So the petrol was underneath where the driver sits, basically.
Oh.
Underneath. That's where the tank was. You sat on top of the tank.
See, that's comforting, the fact you're sitting on the fuel.
Well, I didn't know that. The whole time I had the bloody thing.
Lost keys, Sarah. James just suggested.
Lost keys. Oh, yeah.
We took a camper van, which we hired, which was beautiful to drive and everything. But we went and we stopped at Riverton overnight because a friend of ours was having a 40th birthday. She's older than us. Sarah was probably 8 months old or something. I don't know. So we went to the camping ground and we set up our camp and all that sort of stuff. And then we could not find the key to this van that we'd hired. We had no idea where it was, and it was this most frantic sort of search. And involved certainly Mum and Dad were. Did Mum and Dad come up?
No,
just us. But anyway, we couldn't find it. But eventually we did. In the morning we found it in one of the suitcases. So we must have like got, you've got a young child and you're sort of unpacking things. You just put the key down somewhere safe in the suitcase. And so mystery lost keys.
My topic suggestion is like all the things people use to make decisions, like when they pick, daisy petals for yes and no, or
like
magic
drawing
acorns.
straws, or okay. But in particular, the sort of fortune telling kind of ones, like where like using the daisy or flipping your eraser. Did people do that at primary school? You write yes on one side and no on the other and throw your eraser.
Yep.
I like the superhero snake. That would be involved in drawing straws.
Oh, that was magnificent. I love that.
So the brave superhero snake.
Yeah. That was very funny.
It was a beautiful place, and we had, for the first time when we camped at a national park campground, we had hosts, volunteer hosts, didn't we?
Yeah.
So you'd arrive there and there was a couple that would, welcome you and make sure that you're in the right campsite. And they do encourage us to be hosts, but after a few of their tales of telling us how to deal with other people's issues, we thought we'd deal with the stupid people.
Like there's people they were at another campground in Deep Creek just like the week before or 2 weeks before, and they're lighting fires, on the campground. That's
And then when they got caught, they decided they were going to cook in their
they
tent.
brought their charcoal fire into the tent.
Oh.
And I thought, into their nylon tent. You're thinking, maybe we thought this through.
Sarah, have something like that in the story.
And talking about the keys, another thing that they told us was some other people because there were 2 campsites, but there was another family in the other campsite who'd lugged a camper trailer, which you key lock like ours, and the keys had been left with a friend.
Or left, like they were coming with another family, but they're leaving one car parked in the car park at the other side, at Cape Jervis in the ferry terminal. And that's where they left all the camper keys.
The camper keys are over the other side.
Oh.
And the trailer was at Lashmar. So they were going to get the locksmith the next day, and so they had to camp in the barbecue shelter.
That's magnificent. That's novice campers, isn't it?
Yeah. Let me just check the date of our next story.
Thank you for that gorgeous story.
That's all right.
I have to put a little warning on it, so people don't watch it with their children.
Coarse language. Yeah. Okay. So it's the 13th of February. Our next one. Assuming we're good to go on a Saturday.
Yes, let's do a Saturday.
Yes.
Should be good.
All right. So same time on the 13th then. With
Dangerously.
Catch you before then. See you. Bye.
all right.
See you later.
See you, campers.
Everybody.
They're not novices,
If anyone thinks of any other things that you'd like, just send them to one of the chat threads for me, and I will add them.
Special dietary requirements.
Special dietary requirements. What, when camping? That would be very interesting.
Yes. The cat needs almond milk.
Oh, like the animal has special diet.
Oh.
I reckon that's good.
And I'm kind of the animal skills the key.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That was a really fun story. And that was a great chat because people.
It was a good chat. Everyone sort of got to contribute to it. Yeah. All right. Thank you, everybody. See you next time.